Hello, this is 13N, and I'm gonna tell you why you should embrace Yamaha R9. So I went to check out the Yamaha R9 in the dealership. They've got a pre-production model, the only 3 in the States. And the one that I just saw is actually the one that's in the promotional video. So that's pretty cool. The blue, beautiful Yamaha R9. As you can see, this is not a Yamaha R9. This is my bike. I ride a Triumph Daytona Moto 2. This is a limited edition Daytona. They don't make this one anymore, unfortunately. This is the last generation purebred super sport, a 3-cylinder super sport. So naturally, I'm going to compare my bike with Yamaha R9. Alright, anyway, first thing first. Yamaha R9 is the new Yamaha super sport motorcycle. Well, they call it the accessible super sport because it is actually based off the Yamaha MT-09. The chassis is different. They use a brand new frame, but the subframe, everything else looks very similar. Engine wise, it's actually the same. From what I heard, they didn't tune the engine to fit R9. I think the only difference is the rear sprocket, but everything else is pretty much the same. So some people call it like the fared version of MT-09, but if you look at it, not quite, sort of, but not quite. So when I first saw it, it looks bigger than I thought. It's not as big as the Yamaha R1, obviously. Look at the front, it's got that MotoGP inspired wings, and that's huge. It's a huge wing. If you look on the side, you can actually see all the amount of space going through that. They claim that there is a downforce at a certain speed, and I don't doubt that. How much, I'm not sure, but they say it's functional. But going back to the end, for some reason, they got rid of the classic Yamaha R Sport rear. You know how like the R7, R6 and R1, they have those like hollow wing look at the back. For some reason, R9 doesn't have that. If you look closely, it is still a hollow piece right in between, but it's a lot smaller, really tiny bit of space. I wonder if they do it because they've got a huge front with the wing and they want to kind of like taper it back with the slim look. I'm not sure. And in the front, they got a giant projector right in the middle of what it looks like a rim air intake, but it's not an air intake. I put my finger there, not much space, meaning that the air that's going in is probably negligible. And I reached the back, even though it's a new frame, but there's no hole built in the frame to take that air, unlike this bike or the R6, where usually in the frame in the middle you have an air intake right in between. That doesn't have it. Looks like it does, but it doesn't have it. But I do know on the World Super Sport version of R9, their race bike actually has that rim air intake. Probably routed on the side to the air intake, but definitely not through the middle because the frame doesn't have any space. So that's a bummer. So it looks cool, but not really functioning. When I was there, people were quite surprised by the fact that this Yamaha is actually using a Brembo caliper. Well, not just Brembo caliper, Brembo master cylinder as well, just like the R7. So they've adopted the Brembo system. That's quite rare for Yamaha. They always have that twin star style calipers all the way to the R1, even the R1M. But I guess starting this year, they start working with Brembos. Honestly, I think it gets a lot of attention. Like while I was there, there's a lot of young folks that's looking at the exterior of the bike and they see Brembo, they're like, oh my god, it's Brembo. And then they look at the price, they're like, oh wow, with this price. So I think it's what, around $12,000 MSRP. You're getting that package, and then you also get a rear shock preload adjuster. That's pretty rare for a production bike. I've only seen those external adjusters on like a touring bike where you want to take a passenger so you can quickly adjust it. But on a super sport, it's pretty rare. Usually those are aftermarket products. You get the external adjuster. Otherwise, you just use a flathead screw, right, and then adjust your preload. But on Yamaha R9, they have that package. And frankly, I think R9 is the right product to the market right now. Super Sport is dying. People know that. R1 is not being sold in some other markets. R6 is obviously already discontinued, so the fact that there's an R9 now, I feel like a lot of people appreciate it, and then it's probably gonna sell pretty well. And for the price, like, why would you get an R7 when R9 has this much equipment? Like all the electronics, the engine itself is a killer MT-09, no doubt about that. Brembo calipers is a looker, especially when you got wings. People want wings nowadays.
Right, this is my Daytona. Speaking of the engine sound, when they actually started the bike, and have a listen.
It sounds the same as the MT-09. Yeah, same
I think
They're going for it.
I think it sounds like
they're going
same motor, so I mean, I don't know why it'd be any different.
It sounds just like the MT-09. We have somebody with the MT-09 there, and then they say it's identical. I mean, Yamaha says it should be identical because it is the MT-09's engine. Looks like it's using the same exhaust system as well, and not much change internally. It revs to 12,000 RPMs, but technically I think it only goes up to around 10,000 or so, and then it hits the limiter. So it is kind of like a street bike tuning, but the super sport style. So I'm about 5'9". I sat on the bike. I cannot flat foot it, but then I can not just tiptoeing. I could actually reach, I guess, the ball of my foot. It feels a lot more comfortable than the R6. Pretty different from like my Daytona, where it's built like a super sport. So in terms of ranking, like hardcore super sport, R9 sits kind of in between R7 and R6. That's what I would think. You look at an R6, like you look at everything, the engine, the chassis, subframe. Like when you look at an R6, it looks so tightly packaged with the engine, with the frame over the top. But this R9, it looks kind of loosely fitted. Maybe because the frame, there's a lot of space in between the frames. Like it's as if they didn't design the new frame for the engine. That's a huge part missing. And I'm thinking maybe that's for the automatic transmission mechanism. Yamaha recently released like the YAMT automatic transmission. So maybe that's what that's for. Regardless, R9 is going to be a fun bike, for sure. I mean, MT-09 itself is such an exciting bike. It doesn't need to make that much horsepower, but with that torque, it makes up for it. And R9 is using the same engine. I mean, like a little bit over 100 horsepower with like what, 70 pound-foot of torque. Horsepower-wise, it's probably the same as like the last generation R6. Same horsepower and lots of more torque. Obviously, you won't get that top-end rush where like it revs up over 10,000, like way over 10,000 RPMs, but you get the power right below it, and then just shift, and the power just keeps coming. And I mean, when I was there, I see like at least like 4 people put down a deposit on the R9. So it is a pretty attractive package with how it looks, all the bling bling, all the goodies. In the same class, I don't think I've seen any bike with this comprehensive electronics package. I mean, you could argue like the Triumph Street Triple, the latest one, it's very comparable, or even much better. But the thing is that it's a street bike. I mean, Triumph doesn't want to make Daytona anymore. I mean, the 765 Daytona. So, what do you think?